I refused to pay for my daughter-in-law's loan, so she organized a reconciliation dinner. When I arrived, 5 lawyers were waiting for me with a document transferring all my assets. She said, "If you don't sign, you will never see your grandson again." But when I showed the DNA test, "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was having my coffee and watching the birds at my feeder. Ka's voice was different this time, shakier, more desperate than her usual calculated sweetness. "Bessie, I need to talk to you about something urgent," she said, and I could hear Miles crying in the background. "It's about Miles. He's really sick." My heart stopped. At 64, I'd learned that every call from my daughter-in-law usually meant she needed money, but this sounded different. Miles was only 5 years old, my precious grandson. The only piece of my David I had left since he died in that car accident 3 years ago. "What's wrong with him?" I asked, setting my coffee cup down with trembling hands. "The doctors found something in his blood work," Ka said, her voice breaking in just the right places. "They want to run more tests, but our insurance won't cover it. We need $50,000, Bessie. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death." $50,000. The number hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'd already given Kaya over $100,000 in the past 3 years. First, it was for David's funeral expenses. Even though I'd offered to pay for everything myself, then it was for Miles's daycare. Then moving expenses when she claimed their apartment was unsafe. Then car repairs, then Miles's supposed learning disability treatments that required expensive specialists. "Ka, that's a lot of money," I said carefully. "Can you tell me more about what the doctors said? Which hospital are you going to?" There was a pause just long enough for me to notice. "It's complicated, Bessie. You wouldn't understand all the medical terms. The important thing is that Miles needs this treatment, and he needs it now." Something cold settled in my stomach. In all my years as a nurse before retirement, I'd never met a parent who couldn't explain their child's condition, even in simple terms. I'd like to talk to the doctor myself. Maybe I could help you understand. "There's no time for that," Ka snapped, then quickly softened her tone. "I'm sorry. I'm just so scared. Miles keeps asking for his grandma Bessie. He said to tell you he loves you and hopes you can help him feel better." The emotional manipulation was so blatant it should have made me angry, but instead it just made me tired. So very tired. I thought about Miles's sweet face, his gap-toothed smile, the way he ran to me whenever I visited, but I also thought about the pattern, the constant emergencies, the way Ka always seemed to need money for things that never quite added up. "Ka," I said slowly, "I need you to be honest with me. Is Miles really sick?" The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. "I can't believe you're questioning me about my own son's health. David would be ashamed of you." Using David's memory against me was Kaya's favorite weapon, and she wielded it expertly. But this time, instead of guilt, I felt something else rising in my chest. Anger. Real, clean anger. "Don't you dare use my son's name to manipulate me," I said, my voice steadier than I'd heard it in years. "I've been giving you money for 3 years, Ka. Every emergency, every crisis, every time you claimed Miles needed something. I've never asked for proof, never questioned you, because I trusted you and because I love that little boy, but you don't trust me now." Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "I'm asking for honesty. Show me the medical reports. Let me talk to the doctor. If Miles is really sick, I'll find a way to help, but I won't write another check without knowing exactly what it's for." The explosion came exactly as I expected. "You selfish old woman. My son is dying and you're worried about money. What kind of grandmother are you? The kind who's been supporting you and Miles for 3 years without complaint," I replied. "The kind who wants to make sure her grandson is actually getting the help he needs." "Fine," Kaya screamed. "Don't help us, but don't you dare call here again wanting to see Miles. Don't come to his birthday party. Don't send Christmas presents. You've made your choice, Bessie. You've chosen money over your own grandson." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to call back immediately to apologize, to promise the money. The thought of losing Miles, of never seeing his smile again, was almost unbearable. But another part of me, a part that had been silent for too long, whispered that I'd done the right thing. I'd raised 3 children, worked double shifts as a nurse for 30 years, and saved every penny I could. I'd buried my husband when I was 55 and my son when I was 61. I knew what real emergencies looked like, and I knew what manipulation looked like, too. The phone rang again an hour later. This time, it was Miles. Grandma Bessie. His little voice was tentative, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to call. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my heart breaking. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay." Mommy said, "You don't want to see me anymore because I'm sick." The cruelty of it took my breath away. "Oh, honey, that's not true at all. I love you so much and I always want to see you, but Mommy said you won't help me get better." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible situation. "Miles, do you feel sick? Does anything hurt?" "No," he said simply. "I feel fine, but Mommy cries a lot and says we need money or something bad will happen." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. Miles wasn't sick. Ka was using him, using his innocence, and my love for him to extort money from me. The realization should have made me angrier, but instead, it just made me incredibly sad. "Miles, I want you to know that Grandma Bessie loves you more than anything in the world." I said, "No matter what anyone tells you, that will never change." "I love you too, Grandma. Will you come see me soon?" Before I could answer, I heard Kaya's voice in the background, sharp and angry. "Miles, get off the phone right now." The line went dead again. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about David, about how proud he'd been when Miles was born, how he'd planned to teach him to fish and play baseball. David had loved Kaya deeply, had been completely devoted to her. He never saw the calculating side of her that I'd noticed from the beginning. But David was gone, and I was all Miles had left of his father's family. The question that kept me awake was this: was I protecting Miles by refusing to enable Kaya's lies, or was I abandoning him when he needed me most? By morning, I'd made my decision. I wouldn't give Ka the money, but I wouldn't abandon Miles either. I would find another way to help him, even if it meant going to war with his mother. I had no idea that war was exactly what Ka was planning. 2 weeks of silence passed after that terrible phone call. 2 weeks of checking my phone, constantly hoping Miles might call again. 2 weeks of driving past their apartment complex, never stopping but always slowing down, hoping to catch a glimpse of my grandson playing outside. The silence was deliberate, calculated. Kaya knew exactly what she was doing to me. I tried to stay busy. I volunteered extra hours at the animal shelter, reorganized my entire house, and even started a puzzle that claimed to have 1,000 pieces. But every quiet moment brought the same crushing worry. What if Miles really was sick? What if my stubbornness was keeping me from helping him? Then, on a Thursday evening, my phone rang. Ka's name appeared on the screen, and my heart leaped with hope and dread in equal measure. Bessie. Her voice was soft, trembling, completely different from the fury I'd heard 2 weeks earlier. I'm calling to apologize. I gripped the phone tighter. Ka, I was so scared about Miles and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. She sniffled, and I could hear genuine tears in her voice. You've done so much for us over the years. I had no right to talk to you like that. Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I had to sit down. Oh, honey, I was so worried. How is Miles? Is he okay? That's actually why I'm calling, she said. The doctors found a different treatment option, something our insurance will cover. Miles is going to be fine, Bessie. He's going to be just fine. I started crying then. 3 weeks of suppressed fear and guilt pouring out of me. Thank God. I've been so worried, Ka. I've barely slept. I know. And I'm so sorry. I was just terrified of losing him. You know he's all I have left of David. That hit me right in the heart because it was exactly how I felt about Miles, too. He was my connection to my son, my only grandchild, the bright spot in a life that had seen too much loss. I understand, I whispered. I really do. Bessie, I was wondering, would you like to come to dinner this Sunday? I want to make things right between us. Miles has been asking for you every day. He misses his grandma Bessie so much. The invitation felt like a gift from heaven. I would love that. What can I bring? Just yourself, Ka said warmly. I want to cook for you for once instead of always asking for help. It's the least I can do after everything you've done for our family. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. I spent Saturday shopping for a new toy for Miles, settling on a set of building blocks that would help with his development. I even stopped by the bakery and picked up the chocolate cake that David had always loved, thinking it might be nice to share that memory with Ka. When Sunday arrived, I dressed carefully in the blue sweater Miles had once said made me look pretty, and drove to their apartment with a heart full of hope. The building looked different somehow, cleaner, newer than I remembered. There was even a doorman I hadn't seen before. I'm here to see Kaya Martinez in apartment 12B. I told him. He checked his list and nodded. Mrs. Henderson, yes, you're expected. Take the elevator to the 12th floor. Mrs. Henderson. That was odd. Ka had kept David's last name Thompson after he died. But maybe there was some confusion with the building management. I didn't think much of it as I rode the elevator up. The hallway was carpeted in thick burgundy, much nicer than the worn linoleum I remembered from my previous visits. Maybe they'd moved within the building to a better apartment. That would explain the doorman calling me Mrs. Henderson. I knocked on 12B, my heart racing with anticipation. The door opened and Ka stood there, looking absolutely stunning. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair professionally styled, her makeup perfect. She looked like she was dressed for a business meeting, not a casual family dinner. Bessie, you came. She hugged me tightly, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. Come in. Come in. I stepped inside and immediately felt disoriented. This wasn't the modest 2-bedroom apartment I remembered. This was a spacious, elegantly furnished space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The furniture was all new, expensive-looking. Modern art hung on the walls. "Ka, did you move?" I asked, looking around in confusion. "Oh, yes," she said casually, taking my coat. "We upgraded a few months ago. I forgot to mention it." Upgraded? With what money? I'd been supporting them for 3 years, and Ka had never held a steady job. But before I could ask more questions, she was leading me toward the dining room. "Miles is so excited to see you," she said. "He's been talking about you all week." We rounded the corner into the dining room, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The long mahogany table was set for 8 people, not 3, and sitting around it were 5 men in expensive suits, briefcases at their feet, folders neatly arranged in front of them. They all stood when I entered, their faces professional, but not warm. Bessie Ka said, her voice suddenly different, colder, more businesslike. "I'd like you to meet my legal team." Legal team. My mouth went dry. "I don't understand." "Where's Miles?" "He's at a friend's house," Kaya said smoothly. We thought it would be better if the adults could talk privately. One of the men, tall with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't match the situation, stepped forward. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Robert Chen Kiowa's attorney. Please have a seat." I didn't move. "This isn't a reconciliation dinner, is it?" Ka's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. "Bessie, please sit down. We have some important things to discuss." "No," my voice came out stronger than I felt. "Not until you tell me what this is about and where my grandson is." "Miles is fine," Kaya said impatiently. "He's safe and well cared for. This is about his future Bessie, about making sure he has the security he deserves." Mr. Chen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, we've prepared some documents that we'd like you to review. They concern the financial welfare of your grandson and his mother." He slid a thick folder across the table toward me. I could see the top document clearly. Power of attorney, transfer of assets. My blood turned to ice. "What is this?" "It's very straightforward." Another lawyer spoke up, a thin woman with sharp features. "You'd be transferring ownership of your house, your savings accounts, and your investment portfolio to Ka to be held in trust for Miles's benefit." I stared at them in disbelief. "You want me to sign over everything I own?" "For Miles," Ka said. And suddenly her voice was soft again, pleading. "Bessie, you know how much I love that little boy. You know I'd never do anything to hurt him. But I need to be able to provide for him properly. The apartment, his school, his future. It all costs money. The apartment you apparently upgraded without telling me." I asked sharply. Ka's eyes flashed. "I wanted to surprise you. I wanted you to see that I was being responsible with the resources available to us. Resources, not money I'd given her. Resources. As if my life savings were some kind of family fund she had a right to access." "Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Chen said gently. "We understand this is a lot to process, but Ka has outlined some concerns about Miles' long-term security. Should anything happen to you, he needs to know his future is protected." Something happened to me. I felt sick. "Are you threatening me?" "Of course not," Kaya said quickly. "But Bessie, you're 64 years old. You're not getting any younger. If you died tomorrow, what would happen to Miles? I can barely afford to take care of him as it is." The manipulation was so blatant it took my breath away. But what shocked me more was the setup, the planning that had gone into this moment. The fake dinner invitation, the lawyers, the upgraded apartment, all of it designed to corner me, to make me feel like I had no choice. "And if I don't sign?" I asked quietly. Kaya's expression hardened. "Then I'll have to protect Miles the only way I can. I can't have him exposed to someone who's proven they care more about money than family." "Ah, you're saying I'll never see him again. I'm saying I have to do what's best for my son." I looked around the table at the 5 lawyers, all watching me with professional detachment. They weren't here to advise me or protect my interests. They were here to witness my signature to make sure this transfer was legal and binding. "I need to think about this," I said, standing up. "Actually," the thin female lawyer said, "we'd prefer to complete this tonight. We have a notary standing by. I don't care what you prefer," I said, my voice rising. "I'm not signing anything tonight." Kaya stood too, her composure finally cracking. "Bessie, don't make this harder than it has to be. Miles needs stability. He needs security. You have more money than you could ever spend, and I'm struggling to keep a roof over our heads." I looked at her standing there in her expensive dress in this luxurious apartment surrounded by lawyers who didn't come cheap. And I started to laugh, not from amusement, but from the sheer audacity of it all. "You're struggling," I gestured around the room. "This is what struggling looks like." "I had to borrow money for all this," she said defensively. "I wanted to show you that I could be responsible, that I deserved your trust. Whose money did you borrow?" "Ka." She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. "I'm leaving." "If you walk out that door," Ka called after me, "you'll never see Miles again." "I swear to you, Bessie. I'll make sure of it." I stopped at the door, my hand on the handle. For a moment I almost turned around, almost gave in to the fear of losing the only family I had left. Instead, I opened the door and walked out. Behind me, I heard Ka's voice, sharp with panic. "This isn't over, Bessie. You can't run away from your responsibilities forever." But I was already gone, my mind racing with questions that demanded answers. Questions about where this apartment money had really come from, about why Kaya needed lawyers instead of simply asking for help, and most importantly, about what kind of woman would use her own child as a weapon against his grandmother. I had a feeling I was about to find out. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kaya's face when she delivered her ultimatum. Cold and calculating in a way that reminded me of someone else entirely. Not the grieving widow I'd been supporting for 3 years, but someone I didn't recognize at all. By morning, I'd made a decision. If Ka wanted to play games with lawyers and threats, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I called my own attorney, Margaret Walsh, whom I'd known since David was in high school. "Bessie." "What's this about?" Margaret asked after I'd explained the dinner ambush. "This doesn't sound like standard estate planning. That's what I thought I said." "Margaret, is there any legal way Kaya could force me to sign over my assets? Not unless you're declared mentally incompetent, which you clearly aren't." "But Bessie, the fact that she brought 5 lawyers to intimidate you into signing, that's concerning. That level of legal representation isn't cheap." The same thought had been nagging at me. She said she borrowed money for the apartment and the lawyers. From whom? And why go to such elaborate lengths instead of simply asking for help like she has? Before, I didn't have answers, but I knew someone who might. That afternoon, I drove to Ka's old apartment building, the one where I'd visited dozens of times over the past 3 years. The building manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, had always been friendly. "Oh, Mrs. Thompson," she said when she saw me. "How are you? I haven't seen you since Kaya moved out." "When did she move?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "About 6 months ago. Paid off her lease early and everything. She must have come into some money because she was always behind on rent before that. 6 months ago. That was around the time Ka had asked me for money for Miles's supposed learning disability treatments. $15,000 that had supposedly gone to specialists in therapy. Did she say where she was moving?" Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head, just that she'd found a better place. She seemed really excited about it. Said something about finally being able to give Miles the life he deserved. I thanked her and sat in my car for a long time. Pieces of a puzzle starting to form in my mind, but I needed more information before I could see the full picture. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I called Ka and asked to see Miles. "I've been thinking about what you said." I told her, hating myself for the lie about Miles needing stability. "Maybe we could work something out." Her tone immediately brightened. "Oh, Bessie, I'm so glad. I knew you'd come around. You love Miles too much to let pride get in the way. I'd like to see him first, though, to make sure he's really okay. You understand?" There was a brief pause, of course. "Why don't you come over this afternoon? We could have tea and you could spend some time with Miles." When I arrived at the luxurious apartment, Kaya greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was dressed more casually today, but even her casual clothes looked expensive. "Miles is in his room playing," she said, leading me through the spacious living area. "He's been so excited since I told him you might be visiting." The hallway was lined with family photos, most of them featuring Ka and Miles, with a few older ones of David. But as we walked, something caught my attention. In one of the newer photos, Miles looked different somehow. Older, but also I couldn't put my finger on it. Miles' sweetie Kaya called, knocking on a door decorated with superhero stickers. "Grandma Bessie is here to see you." The door opened and Miles peeked out shyly. "Hi, Grandma," he said softly. My heart melted as it always did when I saw him. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "I'm good," he said. But he didn't run to me like he usually did. Instead, he hung back by the door, glancing uncertainly at his mother. "Come give Grandma a hug," Ka encouraged. But there was something forced about her cheerfulness. Miles approached slowly and gave me a careful hug. As I held him, something felt different. He seemed taller, which made sense. Children grow fast at his age. But it was more than that. His hair was different, darker than I remembered. His face seemed more angular. "You've grown so much," I said, pulling back to look at him. "You look so different from the last time I saw you." "Kids change fast at this age," Kaya said quickly. "Growth spurts, you know." I studied Miles's face more carefully. He had David's eyes. Or did he? Suddenly, I wasn't sure. The eyes I was looking at seemed different somehow. Darker, more almond-shaped, not like David's eyes at all. "Miles, do you remember when we went to the zoo last Christmas?" I asked. "You loved the elephant so much you didn't want to leave." Miles looked confused. "I don't remember that, Grandma." My blood chilled. We'd spent 3 hours at the elephant exhibit because Miles had been fascinated by a baby elephant. He'd talked about it for weeks afterward, drawing pictures of elephants and asking when we could go back. "The baby elephant," I prompted. Kumari, you said you wanted to name your teddy bear after her. Miles shook his head, looking genuinely puzzled. I don't have a teddy bear named Kumari, but he did. I'd bought it for him that very day. A small stuffed elephant that he'd carried everywhere for months. Miles, why don't you go back to your room and play? Kaya said, her voice tight. Grandma and I need to talk. As Miles disappeared back into his room, I turned to face Ka. He doesn't remember the zoo. Kids forget things, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes, especially when they're stressed about family problems. Ka, can I see his room? I want to make sure he has everything he needs. I don't think that's necessary. Please, if I'm going to help support him, I want to see where he's living. Reluctantly, Ka led me to Miles's room. It was beautifully decorated with expensive toys and a race car bed that must have cost thousands. But as I looked around, I didn't see a single thing I recognized. Not the stuffed elephant, not the building blocks I'd given him for his 4th birthday, not the framed photo of him and David that had always sat on his nightstand. Where are his old toys? I asked. We donated most of them when we moved. I wanted him to have a fresh start. A fresh start. I picked up a toy from his shelf, a complex robotics kit that seemed far too advanced for a 5-year-old. This is pretty sophisticated for his age. Miles is very bright advanced for his age group, but the Miles I knew struggled with puzzles meant for 4-year-olds. He was a sweet, loving child, but not particularly advanced academically. Ka, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. I turned to face her directly. Is this really Miles? Her face went white. What kind of question is that? Because the child in there doesn't remember things that were incredibly important to the Miles I knew. He looks different. He acts different. Even his voice sounds different. You're being paranoid, Kaya said, but her hands were shaking. Children change, Bessie. It's been several weeks since you've seen him. 3 weeks. Children don't change that much in 3 weeks. I walked back to Miles's room, where he was sitting on the floor with the robotics kit assembling pieces, with a competence that seemed impossible for the child I'd known. Miles, I said gently, kneeling beside him, can you tell me your daddy's name? He looked up at me with those dark, unfamiliar eyes. My daddy's name is Marcus. My world tilted. Marcus, not David. Miles shook his head. Who's David? I stood up so quickly that black spots danced in my vision. Ka was standing in the doorway, her face a mask of panic and guilt. Explain this, I said quietly. Explain this right now. Bessie, you're confused. His father's name is Marcus. He doesn't remember the zoo, doesn't remember any of his toys, doesn't look like the child I've been loving for 5 years. Explain it. Ka opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I can explain everything, but not here. Not in front of him. Then we're leaving right now. As we walked to the living room, my mind was reeling. If this wasn't Miles, my Miles, then where was he? And who was this child? The questions multiplied with each step, each one more terrifying than the last. Start talking, I said once we were alone. Ka collapsed onto her expensive sofa, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. I never meant for it to go this far. What did you never mean to go this far? The lies, the money, all of it. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. But I was so scared, Bessie. After David died, I had nothing. No job, no family support, no way to take care of Miles. So you've been lying to me about Miles for 3 years. Not about Miles, about everything else. The emergencies, the medical bills, the treatments. I made most of it up because I needed the money. But Miles is real. Bessie, he's your grandson. Then who is that child in there? Ka's sob was so broken it sounded like something dying. That's my nephew Jake. His father is my brother Marcus. I've been watching him while Marcus is deployed overseas. The room spun around me. Where is Miles? He's with my mother in Phoenix. I sent him there when I realized you were getting suspicious about the money. I thought if you didn't see him for a while, I could convince you to sign over your assets and then I'd bring him back. You sent away my grandson so you could steal from me. I was going to bring him back. This was just supposed to be temporary until I could get enough money to be independent. I stared at this woman I'd trusted for 3 years. This woman I'd supported and defended and loved like my own daughter. You used my grief. You used my love for Miles to steal from me. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. But she had. She'd taken my grandson away from me and replaced him with a stranger. Also, she could manipulate me into giving her my life savings. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't even feel angry yet. I was too shocked, too broken. I want to see Miles, I said. I want to see my real grandson now. Ka wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. He's in Phoenix. I can call my mother. No, you've lied about everything. I'm not trusting you with one more thing. I picked up my purse. My hands surprisingly steady. I'm going to Phoenix myself. Bessie, wait. But I was already walking toward the door. Behind me I could hear Ka crying, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I looked at her again, I might do something I'd regret. As I waited for the elevator, one thought echoed in my mind. If Ka had lied about this, what else had she lied about? And more importantly, was Miles really my grandson at all? I drove straight home from that nightmare apartment. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every mile between me and my house stretched longer than the last. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to find my real grandson in a world that had suddenly turned completely upside down. Once inside my house, I poured myself a glass of wine with shaking hands and sat at my kitchen table staring at the phone. Kaya had said Miles was with her mother in Phoenix. But how could I trust anything she said now? For all I knew, Miles could be anywhere or nowhere. That thought hit me like a physical blow. What if something had happened to him? What if Ka's lies went deeper than financial manipulation? My mind started racing through horrible possibilities until I forced myself to stop. Panic wouldn't help Miles. Clear thinking would. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for private investigators in my area. If I was going to find the truth, I needed professional help. After reading reviews and checking credentials, I settled on someone named Robert Kane, a former police detective who specialized in family matters. The next morning, I sat in his modest office, telling him everything, Mr. Kane was in his 50s with kind eyes and a patient way of listening that reminded me of my late husband. He took notes while I spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Mrs. Thompson," he said when I finished, "I have to ask this directly. Are you certain the child you've been supporting is actually your biological grandson?" The question I'd been afraid to voice aloud hung in the air between us. I don't know anymore. I thought he was. He was born during David's marriage to Ka. But now, given the level of deception involved, we need to consider all possibilities. Tell me about when Miles was born. I closed my eyes, remembering David called me from the hospital. He was so excited, so proud. He said Miles looked just like him as a baby. I flew out the next day to meet him. And did he look like David? I tried to picture those early visits, but the memories were clouded by emotion and time. Babies all look so similar when they're newborn. I thought I saw resemblances, but maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. Mr. Kane nodded sympathetically. It's very common for grandparents to see family resemblances that may not actually exist. Now you mentioned that Kaya claims Miles is with her mother in Phoenix. Do you have any contact information for the grandmother number Ka always said her family was estranged, that they didn't approve of her marriage to David? I offered several times to reach out, but she said they wouldn't want to hear from me. Another convenient lie, it seems. Mr. Kane made more notes. I'm going to need some basic information to start the investigation. Full names, dates of birth, last known addresses. But Mrs. Thompson, I also need to prepare you for the possibility that this investigation might uncover things you're not prepared to hear. Like what? Like the possibility that Miles isn't your biological grandson at all. Like the possibility that Ka has been running a long-term con using any child, to extract money from you. The words hit me like ice water. You think she would do that? I think someone who would fake medical emergencies, hire lawyers to intimidate you, and substitute one child for another is capable of almost anything. I left his office with a sick feeling in my stomach, but also with a sense of purpose. For the first time in days, I was taking action instead of just reacting to Ka's manipulations. That evening, my phone rang. Ka's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering, but I needed to keep her talking to see if she would reveal anything useful. "Bessie, thank God," she said when I picked up. "I've been calling all day. We need to talk about about how you've been lying to me for 3 years, about how you sent my grandson away so you could steal from me. It's not like that. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. A single mother trying to raise a child alone, no support from my family. Where is Miles?" A pause. "He's safe. He's with my mother in Phoenix, like I told you. Give me her address. I want to see him." "Bessie, that's not a good idea right now. Miles is confused about everything that's happened. Seeing you might upset him more. Another lie. Another manipulation. What's your mother's name, Ka? Why does that matter? Because I'm going to find Miles with or without your help. You can make this easy, or you can make it hard. But either way, I'm going to see my grandson." The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. "You know what, Bessie? Maybe it's time you learned the whole truth." My heart started racing. What truth? The truth about David. The truth about Miles. The truth about everything you think you know about our family. What are you talking about? David wasn't the saint you remember him as. He had problems, Bessie. Big problems with gambling, with drinking, with other women. I felt like she'd slapped me. That's not true, isn't it? Why do you think he was always traveling for work? Why do you think we needed money so often, even when he was alive? You're lying. I protected you from the truth because I knew it would hurt you. But David was a mess, and he left us with nothing but debts and problems. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Even if that's true, it doesn't excuse what you've done. What I've done is survive. What I've done is try to give Miles a better life than his father could provide. By lying and stealing, by doing whatever it takes. Her voice was rising now, losing the calculated control. You, with your comfortable retirement, your paid-off house, your savings account, you have no idea what it's like to be desperate to have a child depending on you and no way to provide for him. So you decided to provide for him with my money. I decided to make sure he didn't grow up poor like I did. The mask was completely off now. This was the real Ka, not the grieving widow I'd been supporting, but someone willing to do anything hurt anyone to get what she wanted. I'm going to find Miles, I said quietly. And when I do, I'm going to make sure he's safe from you. Good luck with that, Ka said. And there was something cold and triumphant in her voice. Because you might not like what you find when you dig too deep, Bessie. Some truths are better left buried. She hung up, leaving me staring at the phone and wondering what she meant. The next morning, Mr. Kane called with his first update. Mrs. Thompson, I've made some progress, but I need to ask you something sensitive. Do you have anything of Miles that might contain his DNA? A toothbrush? A piece of clothing? Anything? My heart sank. No. When I visited his room yesterday, there was nothing I recognized. Ka said she'd donated all his old things. That's convenient. What about from when he was younger? Any baby teeth? Hair from a haircut? I thought hard. Wait. Yes. I have a lock of hair from his first haircut. I saved it in his baby book. Perfect. I'm going to need that for DNA testing. DNA testing? But why? The realization hit me like a truck. You want to test whether Miles is really David's son? It's the only way to know for certain whether this child is actually your grandson. I've also been doing some background research on Kaya Martinez. What did you find some interesting discrepancies? For one thing, there's no record of her mother living in Phoenix. In fact, there's no record of any family members in Arizona at all. I sat down heavily, so she lied about that too. It appears so. But there's more. I found records of Ka living with a Marcus Rivera for 2 years before she married your son. They had a child together. A son born about 6 months before Miles. The world tilted around me. A son? Yes. And here's the interesting part. There's no birth certificate for Miles Thompson. None at all. I couldn't breathe. What does that mean? It means that legally Miles Thompson doesn't exist, which suggests that the child you've been supporting as your grandson is actually Marcus Rivera's son, born 6 months earlier than you were told. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. So Ka took Marcus's son, told me he was David's, and has been using him to steal from me for 3 years. That's what the evidence suggests. But Mrs. Thompson, there's something else you need to know. What I tracked down Marcus Rivera. He's not deployed overseas like Kaya told you. He's in county jail serving time for check fraud, and he's been asking the authorities to help him find his missing son. The room spun around me. Missing son. Ka took the child and disappeared over 3 years ago. Marcus has been looking for him ever since. I thought about the little boy I'd loved, the child I'd believed was my grandson. Is he okay? According to the missing persons report, the child was healthy when Ka took him, but Marcus hasn't seen him since. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of Ka's deception. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd kidnapped a child and used him in an elaborate con game. And somewhere out there, a father had been searching for his son, while I unknowingly helped hide him. "Mr. Kane," I said quietly, "I want you to find that little boy. Not because I think he's my grandson, but because he deserves to be with his real father. Already working on it, but Mrs. Thompson, there's one more thing you should know." "What now?" I pulled David's medical records from his last physical. He was diagnosed with a condition that would have made it virtually impossible for him to father children. The final blow landed with devastating precision. David couldn't have been Miles's father, which meant I'd never had a grandson at all. But that little boy was still out there somewhere, still being used as a pawn in Ka's game, and Marcus Rivera was still looking for his son. Maybe I couldn't save my own family, but I could still save theirs. The drive to the county jail felt like the longest hour of my life. Mr. Kane sat beside me in the passenger seat, a manila folder thick with evidence resting on his lap. In my purse, I carried the lock of hair from Miles' first haircut. The child I'd loved for 3 years, not knowing he wasn't my grandson at all. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Mr. Kane asked as we pulled into the parking lot. "Meeting Marcus Rivera is going to make this all very real." I stared at the imposing concrete building ahead of us. A man has been separated from his son for 3 years because of me, because I was too blind to see what Ka was doing. I owe him this much. The visiting room was sterile and depressing, filled with plastic chairs and the smell of industrial disinfectant. When Marcus Rivera walked in escorted by a guard, my breath caught in my throat. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with dark hair and kind eyes that looked exhausted by grief and worry. "Mr. Rivera," Mr. Kane said, standing as Marcus approached our table. "Thank you for agreeing to see us. This is Mrs. Thompson." Marcus sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. "You're the woman who's been taking care of Jake. Jake, not Miles." The name hit me like a physical blow, a reminder that everything I'd believed for 3 years had been a lie. I didn't know," I whispered. "I thought he was my grandson." Marcus nodded, and I saw understanding in his expression rather than anger. "Ka told you he was your son's child?" "Yes." She said his name was Miles, that David was his father. I've been supporting them both, giving her money, believing I was helping my grandson. "Jake is 5 years old," Marcus said quietly. "He loves dinosaurs and chocolate ice cream and building things with blocks. He calls me Papa, and he used to call Ka Mama, but I don't know what he calls her now or even if he remembers me." Tears started flowing down my face. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she'd taken him from you." "I would never have." "I know," Marcus said gently. "You're a victim in this too. Ka is very good at making people believe what she wants them to believe." Mr. Kane opened his folder. "Marcus, we've been investigating Ka's current situation. We think we may have found where she's keeping Jake." Marcus leaned forward, hope flickering in his tired eyes. "Where she's been living in an expensive apartment under an assumed name using money she's been taking from Mrs. Thompson. But here's the thing. We think she's planning to disappear again soon." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed Marcus the photos I'd taken secretly during my last visit to Ka's apartment. "She's living way beyond her means. This place costs more per month than most people make in a year. She's also been pressuring me to sign over all my assets to her. She's planning one final score," Mr. Kane explained. "Get Mrs. Thompson to transfer everything to her, then disappear with the money and Jake. Start fresh somewhere else with a new identity." Marcus's face went pale. "We have to stop her. We're going to, I said firmly. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Marcus nodded. Is there any possibility that Jake could actually be David's son? That maybe you and Ka, that the timing could be confused? Marcus shook his head definitively. No, Jake was born in March. I was with Ka from July through the following June. Your son couldn't be Jake's father. The DNA test results had already confirmed this, but hearing it from Marcus made it final. I had never had a grandson. David had died without leaving me any family at all. But looking at Marcus, seeing the pain and desperation in his eyes, I realized something important. This wasn't about my loss anymore. This was about a father who'd been searching for his stolen child for 3 years. Tell me about Jake, I said. Tell me who he really is. Marcus's whole face lit up. He's the smartest, funniest little boy you'll ever meet. He loves to take things apart to see how they work. He makes up songs about everything. About breakfast, about the weather, about his stuffed dinosaur named Rex. He has this laugh that just fills up a whole room. As he spoke, I thought about the quiet, almost timid child I'd met in Ka's apartment. The boy who'd seemed uncomfortable, who hadn't remembered things that Miles should have remembered. Now I understood why. He wasn't the same child at all. When Ka took him, Marcus continued. Jake was 2.5 old enough to remember me to miss me. I used to read him stories every night, and he'd fall asleep holding my hand. Why did she take him? I asked. Marcus's expression darkened. Because she found out I'd been saving money to fight for full custody. Ka had been using drugs, leaving Jake with neighbors for days at a time while she partied. I was trying to build a case to prove she was unfit, and she found out. She found the papers I'd gotten from a lawyer. That night she packed up everything and disappeared with Jake. I came home from work and they were just gone. Mr. Kane leaned forward. Marcus, there's something else you should know. We have evidence that Ka has been using Jake and other scams too. She's been taking him to wealthy neighborhoods, claiming he has various medical conditions, asking for donations. My stomach turned. She's been using that little boy to con money from strangers. It appears so. We found records of at least 3 other elderly people who've given her substantial amounts of money for Jake's supposed medical treatments. The scope of Ka's cruelty was staggering. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd been systematically exploiting kind-hearted people using a kidnapped child as her weapon. We have to get him away from her, I said. Today the police are already involved, Mr. Kane assured me. But we need solid evidence of where she is, and that Jake is with her. I can help with that, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm going to call her, tell her I've decided to sign over my assets. Arrange a meeting, Bessie. That could be dangerous, Mr. Kane warned. I don't care. That little boy has been away from his father for 3 years because of my ignorance. I'm not letting it continue for one more day. I dialed Kaya's number before I could lose my nerve. She answered on the second ring. Bessie, I was hoping you'd call. Have you had time to think about what we discussed? I've thought about it, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. You're right. Miles needs security, and I'm not getting any younger. Oh, thank God, Ka breathed. I knew you'd come around. You love him too much to let stubbornness get in the way. The ease with which she lied even now was breathtaking. I want to see Miles before I sign anything, though. I want to make sure he's okay. Of course. Why don't you come over this evening? We can have dinner. You can spend time with Miles, and then we can take care of the paperwork. Actually, I'd prefer to meet somewhere neutral. Maybe that park where we used to take Miles. The one with the duck pond. There was a brief pause. Why there? because that's where some of my happiest memories with Miles are. If I'm going to sign over everything I own, I want to do it in a place that means something to our family. It was a lie, but it was the kind of sentimental reasoning that Kaya would expect from me. "All right," she said slowly. "What time 6:00? And Ka bring Miles. I want him to be there when I sign the papers. I want him to know that everything I'm doing is for him." "Of course. We'll see you at 6:00. After I hung up, Marcus looked at me with something like awe. "You're really going to do this? That little boy deserves to be with his father," I said simply. "And you deserve to have your son back." Mr. Kane was already on his phone with the police arranging for officers to be stationed around the park. "They'll move in as soon as we have visual confirmation that Jake is there." "What about Ka?" I asked. "She'll be arrested for kidnapping, fraud, and probably a dozen other charges." Mr. Kane said grimly, "She's going to prison for a very long time." As we prepared to leave for the park, Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. "Mrs. Thompson, I want you to know something. What Ka did to you lying about Jake being your grandson, that was cruel. But Jake is a wonderful little boy, and even though you're not his real grandmother, you loved him. That means something." I squeezed his hand, thinking about all the afternoons I'd spent reading to Miles, all the toys I'd bought him, all the bedtime stories and birthday parties, and moments of pure joy I'd experienced believing he was my family. "Maybe," I said quietly, "when this is all over, you'd let me visit him sometimes, not as his grandmother, but as well as someone who cares about him." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. I think Jake would like that very much. As we drove toward the park where everything would finally come to an end, I thought about the strange turns life takes. I'd lost a grandson I'd never really had. But maybe, just maybe, I was about to help a real family find each other again. And sometimes that was the best kind of miracle you could hope for. The park looked deceptively peaceful in the golden light of early evening. Families were scattered across the grass, children playing on swings, couples walking hand in hand around the duck pond. It seemed impossible that such a serene setting was about to become the scene of a kidnapped child's rescue. I sat on the bench where Ka and I had agreed to meet, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. Kane was positioned near the playground pretending to read a newspaper. Marcus waited in a car at the far edge of the parking lot, surrounded by plainclothes police officers. The plan was simple. Once we confirmed that Jake was with Kaya, the officers would move in. At exactly 6 hours, I saw them approaching along the path. Kaya walked confidently, her expensive heels clicking on the pavement. A large leather bag slung over her shoulder, no doubt containing the legal documents she expected me to sign. Beside her, holding her hand, was the little boy I'd known as Miles. My heart clenched as I watched him. He seemed smaller than I remembered, more fragile. His dark hair caught the sunlight, and even from a distance I could see that he looked nothing like David. How had I been so blind? Bessie Kaya called out with a bright smile as they got closer. "Look who's excited to see his grandma." Jake looked up at me with those dark eyes, not David's eyes at all, and gave me a small, uncertain smile. "Hi, Grandma, Bessie." "Hello, sweetheart?" I managed my voice barely steady. "How are you?" "I'm good," he said softly. But I noticed he stayed close to Kaya's side, not running to me like the enthusiastic child I remembered from earlier visits. Kaya sat down beside me, pulling Jake onto her lap. "He's been talking about you all day, haven't you?" "Miles?" Jake nodded, but there was something in his expression that made my heart ache. He looked tired, confused like a child who'd been moved around too much and didn't quite understand why. "I brought the papers," Kaya said, patting her bag. "My lawyer explained everything to me. It's really quite straightforward." "Good," I said, though my mouth felt dry as dust. "But first, I'd like to spend a few minutes with Miles, just the two of us. Would that be okay?" Ka's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, but let's not take too long. The notary is meeting us at 7, and you know how these legal people are about schedules. What notary?" This was the first I'd heard of any notary, but I nodded as if I understood. "Just a few minutes." Kaya stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "I'll go get us some coffee from that vendor over there. Miles, you stay with Grandma Bessie." "Okay." Jake nodded, and Kaya walked away, her heels clicking purposefully toward the small coffee cart near the pond. I watched her go, then turned my attention to the little boy sitting beside me. "Jake," I said quietly. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. "How do you know my real name?" My heart broke for him. "Because I know who you really are, sweetheart. And I know who your real papa is." Tears immediately filled his eyes. "Papa. You know where Papa is? He's been looking for you for a very long time," I whispered, glancing toward the coffee cart to make sure Ka wasn't returning yet. "He misses you so much. I miss him too," Jake said, his voice breaking. "Mama said he went away and didn't want me anymore. But I didn't believe her. Papa would never leave me." The cruelty of what Ka had done hit me anew. Not only had she kidnapped this child, but she'd convinced him that his father had abandoned him. "Your papa never stopped looking for you. I told him he loves you more than anything in the world, and he's here right now." Jake's eyes grew huge. "He's here?" "Yes. But I need you to be very brave." "Okay. Some police officers are going to come talk to Mama, and then Papa is going to take you home." "Are you coming too?" Jake asked, and the innocent question pierced my heart. "No, sweetheart. I'm not your real grandma, even though I love you very much. Your real family is your papa, and he's going to take such good care of you." Jake processed this information with the remarkable adaptability of childhood. "But you'll still be my friend, always." I promised. I saw Ka returning with 2 coffee cups, her expression sharp as she noticed how closely Jake and I were talking. At the same time, I spotted Mr. Kane approaching from the playground, speaking quietly into his phone. "Everything okay over here?" Kaya asked as she sat back down, her voice light, but her eyes weary. "Perfect," I said. Miles was just telling me about his day. "Wonderful. Now, should we get started with those papers?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps approaching from multiple directions. Kaya looked up, her expression shifting from weariness to alarm as she saw several people in business casual clothing walking purposefully toward our bench. Kaya Martinez, the lead officer, a woman in her 40s with kind but stern eyes, held up her badge. "I'm Detective Sarah Chen. We have a warrant for your arrest." Ka's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, and multiple counts of fraud." Detective Chen continued. "You have the right to remain silent." As the detective read Ka her rights, I heard running footsteps on the path behind us. Marcus appeared, his face a mixture of joy and desperation as his eyes locked on Jake. "Papa!" Jake screamed, jumping up from the bench and running toward his father. Marcus caught him and swept him up into his arms, both of them crying as they held each other. The reunion was so beautiful and so heartbreaking that I had to look away, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had been stolen from them. "You don't understand," Ka was saying to the officers even as they handcuffed her. "I was protecting him. His father is unstable, dangerous." "Ma'am, please save your explanations for your lawyer," Detective Chen said firmly. As they led Kaya away, she turned back toward me, her face twisted with rage. "This is your fault, Bessie. You destroyed our family." "No," I said quietly, standing up from the bench. "You destroyed it the day you decided to use a child as a weapon." After Ka was gone, Marcus approached me, still holding Jake in his arms. The little boy was clinging to his father like he'd never let go again. "Mrs. Thompson," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me," I replied. "I should have seen the truth sooner. You couldn't have known," he said gently. "She's a professional manipulator, but you did the right thing in the end." I looked at Jake, who was staring at me with curious eyes. "Will you tell him the truth about everything, about who I am, about what happened when he's older and can understand it better?" Marcus promised. "But I'll make sure he knows that you helped bring him home." Detective Chen approached us with a clipboard. "Mrs. Thompson, we're going to need a formal statement from you about the financial fraud. It looks like Ka has been running similar scams on at least 5 other people over the past few years." I nodded, though the thought of reliving this nightmare in legal proceedings was exhausting. "Whatever you need." As the sun began to set over the park, Marcus sat down on the bench with Jake still in his arms. "Mrs. Thompson, Jake has something he wants to tell you." Jake looked at me shyly. "Thank you for helping me find Papa. You're very welcome, sweetheart. And thank you for being nice to me when you thought I was Miles. Even though I wasn't your real grandson, you were still nice to me." The simple innocence of his words brought tears to my eyes. "You're a very special little boy, Jake, and you deserve all the love in the world." 3 months later, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a crayon drawing of a man and a little boy standing in front of a house with a woman watching from nearby. At the bottom, in careful kindergarten handwriting, Jake had written, "Papa, me, and Grandma, friend Bessie." Along with the drawing was a letter from Marcus. "Dear Bessie, Jake wanted me to send you this picture he drew of our family. He insisted that you should be in it. Even though you live far away now, he calls you his grandma friend and asks about you often. We're doing well. Jake is in counseling to help him process everything that happened, but he's resilient and happy. He still loves dinosaurs and building things, and he's made friends at his new school. I got a job at a construction company, and we have a small apartment near a park where Jake can play safely. I wanted you to know that the money you lost to Ka, some of it, was recovered when they found her hidden accounts. The district attorney says you should receive about 40% of what she took from you. It won't replace everything, but it's something. More importantly, I want you to know that you gave us the greatest gift possible. You gave me back my son. If you ever want to visit, you're always welcome. Jake would love to show you his dinosaur collection. With gratitude and friendship, Marcus and Jake Rivera." I hung Jake's drawing on my refrigerator, where it joined photos of my real family, my late husband, my son David, and the life I'd built before Ka's lies changed everything. The house felt different now. Not empty exactly, but peaceful in a way it hadn't been for years. I no longer jumped every time the phone rang. No longer felt the constant anxiety of wondering what crisis would require my financial intervention next. I'd lost money. Yes, I'd lost the illusion of having a grandson, but I'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I was strong enough to face the truth, even when it hurt, strong enough to put a child's welfare above my own emotional needs. Strong enough to start over at 64. Some mornings I missed the little boy I'd thought was Miles. But then I remembered Jake's reunion with his real father, the pure joy on both their faces, and I knew I'd made the right choice. I was free now, free from manipulation, free from lies, free from the exhausting cycle of being used by someone who saw my love as a weakness to exploit. And in a small apartment across the country, a father and son were free too. Free to build a life together, free from the woman who had torn them apart. Sometimes I realized the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or material things. Sometimes it's simply the chance to go home. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.